We're on now. I called to order our commissioner briefing on May 20th. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, everyone. Commissioners, are there any questions or any discussion items for our 5 p.m. agenda? All right, we are going to move into staff updates. It has been requested that we move our FCC update from number 2 on the agenda to number 1. Does everyone agree to that? All right, Dane. The floor is yours.
Chair Edwards, Commissioners, thank you. Good afternoon. Hope everybody's doing well. So we're here to provide an update on FCC services. As a reminder, FCC Environmental is our exclusive franchise contractor for residential waste and recycling collection in unincorporated areas of Buncombe County. With us today, we have Charles Merkley, John Connerton, John and Lewis Knight from FCC to do a presentation and talk about operations and where we are currently. And Charles?
Good afternoon, Chair Edwards, Commissioners. My name is Charles Merkley, Vice President of Business Relationship and Development for FCC Corporation. Also with me today, you've heard the names, but Lewis Knight is our local general manager. John Connerton is our area manager, and also John Addison is our operations performance manager that looks at all our metrics. So with that, if we could go to slide 3, if I control that, I will do that. So basically, some of the things we want to talk about today is the call center, different trends that are happening, services, credits, and community outreach, which we felt is important. So getting right into it, some of the actual data. You can see in April, we were averaging 70-some calls, and for May, it's dropped down to 40-some, and that's on a 5-week basis or 5-day basis. So again, you can see on the pie chart the different reasons of why they're calling, and we also know some of the reasons why you're getting calls, and we'll cover that as well. So as we move along, it kind of just more data. It tells us how the call flow's been going and where they've been going, and it's a scorecard not only for us, but also how we're doing on the road and the streets. And again, if you look at it in a pie chart, in a graph, I should say, it kind of shows you where we were in March and through April. And some of the next slides, we'll talk about how we saw that, the spike up and then the spike down. So I would like to get to that where we can spend more time on that information. But some of the improvements that the team behind me have done, and they can speak to that as well. Route optimization for us is, we started out with routes and we do a transition. Obviously, we listen to our people and listen to the residents. We make changes as we go. And along with those changes, you can see some of the changes we did. Some of the repeat calls that we see that are troublesome for all of us. We've instituted a different program where our operational team are held accountable, and by the end of the day, making sure that we did make sure that there was any repeated or any type misses in route completion. Our IT solutions is ever evolving, I will tell you that, in the data world. IT has been very important to us in being able to gather the data. We went from the days of reading paper maps and doing it, pinning on a map, to tablets in the trucks and making sure that that operation data is transmitting properly. As you well know, in some of the mountainous areas, the data doesn't transmit, but when we get back to where it can transmit, that data is there. So we're able to capture that data. We've changed some of our management team. We realized that maybe, okay, the start was some, and then we had to make changes, so we did. So we felt that we've been nimble enough to make those changes and try to get the right people in the best positions for servicing the residents of Buncombe County. So these are some of the things that we did. We brought in some more experience. We felt operational type folks to help Lewis and his team. We added John Connerton. We do have a regional RVP, Mitch Dahlstrom, but John is a guy really that controls the area along with Lewis and his local team. With that, we hear a lot about some of the things we did wrong. We stand here today and admit some of the things we have done wrong. But we've also tried to correct those. And for those, and I'm sure there's some we could have missed, but again, that's one-by-one, case-by-case basis. But we provided nearly $8,000 worth of credits for people to say, hey, you can't bill me, you didn't service me. We hear you 100%. So that equates to dollars, and you can see those dollars. It's a couple $100,000 plus that we credited back, and that's the right thing to do from our standpoint, and it's not always getting to all the people. And again, I state here today, those that may not have, well, please contact us. It's obviously we're not shying away from our responsibilities. We're a committed partner, and we've shown some of that through what we really should do is the right thing. Some of the recycling, we thought this was important to see because recycling's near and dear to our hearts. That's what we do. That's our business as well as collecting garbage. But it's processing the right materials. And some of the ideals that came out with the staff and us collaborating was putting together the QR code on the card itself. And that QR code gets scanned, and the county staff track that. So you can see the 600 plus have scanned that in, and it basically tells you the do's and don'ts about what you can and can't recycle. What does that all equate to? If you measure it compared to the previous performance, it's about roughly, I want to say, 100 tons a month more that we're actually putting back into the recycling stream versus into the landfill. So we always think that's part of our due diligence and right to be able to make sure that the residents have the opportunity to recycle. Community outreach. We think that's very important. We did some of that since we've been here. We met some of you at some of the functions. We think it's very important to mix our essential services with the residents that are receiving those services. And it also gives them an opportunity to tell us where we failed and where we can get better. And I think it's a partnership for a long term, and our obligation is to be in the community and provide opportunity for our residents, your residents, to speak to us about anything we're doing right or anything we're doing wrong. So with that, we keep it fairly simple. I have our operations teams here and myself to answer your questions that you may have, and we're at this point ready for your questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Wells.
Yes, well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for the community outreach and for the process improvements. I appreciate that you're continuing to work on that. And you kind of touched on this, but could you speak to it a little bit more? Like, one of my concerns is I am continuing to hear from some community members where there's ongoing misses. And I think maybe they're on, I don't know if there's a hot list or what have you, but those that there's some repetition of those misses. Can you speak to that and how you're going to rectify that, please?
Sure, if you don't mind, I'd like to defer to our operational team that's on the ground working it every day. So with that, John and Lewis will provide you answers.
Thank you.
All right, so one of the main things that we put in place was, as Charles would say, we upgraded or added to our staff for operations, which helps us monitor the routes better. The processes that were in place prior, like repeat misses, repeat complaints, the process before was go take care of the problem, but the actual not digging into the root cause. So now every one that would come in that is considered a repeat or a hot list, they're verified by the route managers. We've got process in place where those are going to be verified, where we actually would notify the county, hey, these have all been verified, they're taken care of today. And really just putting in, the extra effort to make sure where the breakdown was. was it the driver, is the route? There's been many cases where, which we learned doing this reroute, where we might be on street A, but the trash was actually on street B, but we didn't know that. So we constantly missed it. So we would send someone out to get it, and then we'd miss it again because we keep going to street A, the trash is sitting on street B. So these were all learning curves that we've learned a lot from. Doing the routing changes and stuff really helped us understand the different areas and dynamics of what kind of trucks we're sending there. That was a big part of it, whether it be a small truck, an ASL, a rear loader truck. So all those put together is really enhanced and should eliminate all those repeat problems. And like I said, the team that we have in place now is dedicated to make sure that, they're following up on these daily. It's not a large number as a whole per day, so it's not undoable. But we realized where we failed to get the root cause in the first place. We just kept, it's like we put the fire out, but we know the embers were just kept blowing back in and it would light back up again. So we're on top of that now. So.
Thank you.
Within the last day, since a news story or an opinion piece in the Asheville Watchdog hit their website, I've had about a dozen, and that's in a course of a day, a dozen emails on the same topic is significant to me. And they're echoing the same things. They call, they email, they're attempting to pay their bill, and they're not getting a response. Can you please address, because I hear you say, have them reach out to us, have them call us, have them email us, but to hear customers say, we're doing those things and nobody responds is frustrating. Can you share more, please?
I would love to answer that. So we've heard those saying, just like I read, we hear, you hear. So what we have done, we have changed our philosophy on, we always had local call people and we had local numbers. Be honest, some of the beginnings, there was many calls that were just, nobody was answering. So instead of letting them go nowhere, we instituted a centralized call center. We not only use for Buncombe, but we use for many things, but mostly for commercial billing and that. But we instituted some of that. So we have looked strong. We've listened to what staff has recommended. We've reached out to some local staffing agents that at the beginning said, no, we can't handle that volume. But at this point, we feel the volume has changed quite dramatically. So we're looking at a strong possibility of localizing that and being able to pick up that phone. One of the things locally, one of the things we ran into was a firewall issue, to be perfectly honest. The call center firewall was blocking some of those. And how many have heard a busy signal, a drop, or something like that, which, again, is embarrassing, but it's the truth. So we've changed that. So going forward in the very near future, in the coming weeks, we will staff up locally and do that ourselves. And we feel with the service levels and the correction, the route optimization, that these calls will, as you can see, are dropping and will continue to drop or flatline to where it's reasonable. And we should only leave that call center for a backup situation. I've called it myself and had the same issues that others have had, so I understand clearly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, was the local call center part of the initial contract that we agreed to?
Yes, that is correct. And we do have local people that do answer the phone, but back to my other statement.
And I understand hiring is tough everywhere. I get it. I understand. I think folks in Buncombe County, when they call places, they like to hear people who sound like them, who understand what they're facing, and I think that is a fair concern of us to continue expressing to you.
We hear you loud and clear, and we're moving quickly to that direction.
I just got a
Commissioner
comment.
Sloan and then Commissioner Whiteside.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I guess I would say, I think that the job you guys have to take over from a competitor from the past sounds really hard. I think it's a harder job than anyone and everyone might give you credit for. I very much appreciate and believe the data that everything's been improving absolutely has. I can see it. But I just want to say, I guess on behalf of our staff have been through a lot over the last 6 months. Our solid waste staff, in particular, have been participating in one of the largest debris removal exercises in American history. They have other stuff to do than to catalog and worry about all these complaints and questions from customers and citizens. So I just leave that with you, is that our staff have better things to do and other things to do than to, in the end of May of 2025, to keep working on this. So I appreciate that. Appreciate what you're doing, and keep at it, I guess is what I'd say. Thank you.
I would like to echo what Parker said. I feel sorry for poor Dane. I think I hate to email or call him or even talk to him. He wonders what now. But I'm glad to see that you all have come a long way. And I know I wasn't kind to you before. I'm a little better now. I see that you're headed in the right direction, and keep it up. But especially, our chair pointed out, the big complaint I hear now is the call center. That's what, everybody, wherever I go, if something comes up about the FCC, it's that, who do we talk to? We're talking to people in Colorado, Texas, different things. But the call center, I think now, if you can get through that hurdle, we'll be where we need to be, I hope.
Well, Commissioner, that is not our model, and that isn't what we put in our proposal. So it was, we wanted to make sure at least we attempted to make the calls answered. So
Yeah.
we hear you loud and clear. And I would like to stand here today on record and say, Mr. Dane Peterson has been, and the staff have been
They have.
more than welcoming to FCC, and we appreciate that.
Thanks.
I just want to quickly say, appreciate the improvements. Appreciate y'all being here today. I was speaking to a constituent a couple weeks ago, a friend of a friend, and he was mentioning that he hadn't gotten his trash picked up, or he had not received his cans yet. And I let him know that he could go down to your facility on Sweeten Creek. And out of curiosity, he didn't have a big enough truck, so I said, we'll take my truck, we'll go down. And so I took him down there, and we picked up cans. It was a smooth process once we arrived. And so if folks are out there who have not received their cans yet, I want to stress that they can go to Sweeten Creek if they have a vehicle large enough to fit their cans in and pick those up. But also, other commissioners may also appreciate the chance just to come and check out your operations and see what you're working with and understand that. I don't want to put extra work on staff to schedule that, but I would love to come down and see that, maybe even do a ride along with you if that's helpful. But I think, the city contracts, or they do not contract. The city has this within their operations, and we're contracting this service. And so that relationship, that understanding is really critical to make sure we have smooth operations. So just welcome the chance to work even more closely with you all, so we can ensure that folks are getting a high-quality service.
And anyone, we would welcome that, of course. We're very proud of our facilities. We put pride in where our people work, and you come to a happy place, it makes you feel happy. So we take honor in our equipment and our facilities.
Yeah. The staff that I met that day were really great, really helpful, so thank you.
Well, that's Lewis and his staff, so thank you.
Commissioner Wells has another question.
And actually, my question is for Dane, if no one else has any questions for them.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am, Commissioner.
Thanks, Dane. And I'm just curious, can you update us on, at this point, we're already to May, so I'm curious to hear the enforcement side of the contract and everything, where we are with that.
Gotcha. Appreciate that question. So we've talked a lot about that. We talked about it when the RFP was going out prior to this contract, that we wanted to build a partnership-friendly type contract, but also a contract that had sufficient accountability metrics. So we've communicated with the FCC. They knew that going in, that we will enforce the contract, and they expect to be held accountable. So they know that side of that, excuse me, as well. So to update the board on the numbers, obviously this is through April. Contract started January 1st, and based on the valid misses, the second and third repeat misses, Buncombe is assessing a liquidated damages penalty of $46,800 to FCC. And we're also, another stipulation to that damage report is 4 community events that we're going to require FCC to perform, to put on, to get out to engage with our community. That's on top of, I think it's helpful with the last slide, we talked about some upcoming county events. That's separate from those. And I think it helps continue to build that trust, build those partnerships, and for FCC to be really visible in our communities. I know they are every day with their trucks, but also, the people that work at FCC are our friends, neighbors, people that live here. So, it is a part of the community. So, pending any other questions on that, that's where we are now. Those liquidated damages have been assessed through April.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dane. Are there any other questions?
Just one piece. Thank you for the enumeration of the liquidated damages portion and the accountability that comes with that. Looking forward to make sure that all of our neighbors are taken care of. I suppose that the community sessions that we're going to have to engage directly will be helpful. What does the next update look like for us? Are y'all going to appear again 30, 60, 90 days out? What's the time frame for expecting some of these changes to go into place?
Yes, I think that's the cadence, Commissioner. If that's helpful to the board, we'll continue keeping a monthly update to the board so we can keep that on your agenda. Does that sound good?
It does. Thank you.
Thanks, Dane. And Dane, thank you to you and your staff. Again, echoing, we know that you have been tasked with a transition in solid waste collection as well as Helene recovery, and we acknowledge and recognize the tasks that have been put on you. And FCC, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, our next item is our Helene update, and I'll turn it over to Manager Pitt.
Thanks, Commissioner. So for our Helene update, as we always do, we'll start with debris. So I see Dane is still in spot, so.
Short trip. I'm not getting my steps in between these agenda items. So, Commissioners, thank you again for the opportunity to provide an update. I know there's a lot of important topics to get to, and as County Manager said, we'll start with debris. So, talking about debris volumes that have been removed to date. So, right-of-way debris removal, we're just north of 1.5 million cubic yards. And also along right-of-way, the soil, sediment, and silt is a little over 150,000 tons with 6,500 loads of sand, silt, and silt and soil being removed from the right-of-way. Waterway debris removal, approximately 1.4 million cubic yards as of May 19th. So right-of-way debris removal mission, so we're talking about the direct federal assistance program that we've been operating under to this point. Right-of-way debris removal with our federal partners is no longer being collected. So those right-of-way allocated debris removal vehicles are not on the roads right now. The right-of-way mission is complete as far as through the direct federal assistance. We are continuing, the county is continuing to work closely with FEMA and our North Carolina partners to assess the remaining debris that is along the right-of-ways. And we are also actively continuing conversations to pursue options with our North Carolina emergency management partners and a SMART program that is, the acronym is State Mission Assigned Recovery Task Force, to really basically explore the eligibility that the county could have through that program and seeing what scope of work and seeing how that program could be an option for us. So we're having those conversations now with those partners. We do ask of our residents in the county, please do not continue to place debris in the right-of-way. Again, that mission is complete, and it's a concern on a couple levels if we continue to bring debris to the right-of-way. Road safety, passing by on the roads with debris right beside on the shoulders. And also, it's accessibility for our emergency service vehicles. So we really want to drive that message. The local disposal options continue to be in place, and that's what we want to. We want to message that there are local contractors, there are local haulers that are ready to help our residents and clean up on their properties and removing that material to take it to proper disposal. So a lot of good local businesses that are ready to help. Landfill's an option. We take vegetative material at the landfill, obviously waste streams at the landfill, and there's private options as well. When you think about one example is Riverside Stump Dump for vegetative material. So we want to make sure the material is managed properly and that we're not adding to some of the challenges with the right-of-way debris that's in the right-of-way.
Dane, before you move on, can you speak to the fact that we're starting to see illegal dumps popping up because people
We
are
are.
leaving debris?
We are, and it's always been like a magnet, and even pre-storm, when one bag of trash gets set out in a strange place or where it's not supposed to be, it's like 100 bags will show up all of a sudden. It's amazing how that happens, but we're seeing that happen at a larger scale, you know, at this point where we're at in the project. So please, you know, FCC, we just heard a presentation from them. Household garbage. There's options for residents to manage their material in the county. Landfill and transfer station, for folks that don't want to subscribe to FCC, bring that material to us. $2 a bag, recycling's no charge. So, and that's, to Avril's point, we're seeing that where debris may have been piled, and then we're also seeing the couches, the trash bags, the things that are in no way relevant to the storm debris cleanup. We're seeing that, and that is posing substantial risk to our communities. So please reach out to solid waste. You know, we can explain to you what the options are, and there is proper methods out there for you to manage your material. Let's see. We do encourage. We want folks to continue to call us because again, we're in an assessment phase, right, where right away is stopped. That mission's complete, but we still want to hear from residents where remaining debris could be in their area. And we're tracking that. We're putting that in a spreadsheet so we can continue the conversations with our state partners and FEMA as well. So that's the call center. Continue to call those 828-250-6100 and hit 2 for debris. Those operational hours are 7 days a week, 7 to 7. Private property debris removal. So 5,300 active applications have been received. Approximately 5,000 of those have been delivered to FEMA for their assessment. And to this point, 2,801 sites have been cleaned up. So on those parcels, that work has been completed by the Corps and Ashbrit. So that's an encouraging number. Again, the deadline for the FEMA stipulated deadline for PPDR to be complete is June 30th. So I feel like things in our conversations with our partners are pretty well on track for that. Resources and questions. The Helene Resource Center at 94 Cox Avenue. Hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. One Buncombe Call Center. And as a reminder, we do get a lot of inquiries, and I know the board gets some inquiries as far as folks that are looking for communication on where is my application in the process for PPDR. So we appreciate that. We do have trained staff at the call center that are able to dive into the specific application that a resident may be looking for and seeing where that is in the process. So we want to continue. If you have questions on your PPDR application, please reach out to the call center, and they're equipped to best handle your question. As far as the actual work in the field, if a situation arose where there could have been property damage or a PPDR cleanup happened where maybe there was debris left over and you were uncertain of why that was, we do have a email address at the bottom of the page. It's at debrismanagementhelene@buncombecounty.org, and we would ask that folks utilize that so we can make sure to get that to FEMA and the Army Corps to address those concerns. So residential and commercial demolition. So 66 packets have been delivered to FEMA at this point. They're actively working through the due diligence phase and working with EHP, Environmental Historic Preservation Group, evaluating these on a case-by-case basis. I believe I spoke incorrectly last time, shocker, but when talking about demo packets, so Buncombe County unincorporated, of the 66, 45 of those are actually in the unincorporated area. So I wanted to clear that up. That was my fault on that. 8 in Barnardsville, 8 in Weaverville, which outside the town limits, Weaverville, and 11 in Swannanoa. Of the 66, there's also 9 out of town of Black Mountain. 3 of which are commercial, and the city of Asheville has 12 of those, which 9 of those are commercial. Demolition inspections are ongoing, packet completions are ongoing with our staff, and demolition is expected to begin soon. Big thank you to local air quality office and Bob Haynes and permits. It's been like everything, we're appreciative of our partners in that process. Waterway debris removal, obviously that's ongoing. Removal with FEMA, USACE, and state partners are working feverishly to meet the deadline. Important point on that is the FEMA stipulated deadline was June 1st for waterway completion. An extension was granted by FEMA due to there were several day stand downs, and that was through basically working with North Carolina Wildlife to ensure that best management practices were being utilized in the field and that things were going per those plans. So waterway debris removal deadline has been extended to June 15th. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions, Commissioners.
Thanks, Dane. Are there questions? All right, Dane, thank you so much again. We
Thank you,
appreciate all that you and your team are doing.
Appreciate y'all.
Sorry, one quick. Sorry,
Sure,
Dane.
Commissioner.
Really quick. I just wanted to ask if you've heard anything about. There was recently an op-ed in the Citizen Times about potentially waterway debris removing live trees or anything like that. Are we tracking that? Have you heard concerns about that?
Yeah.
As folks from local nonprofits who do a lot to protect our rivers, so I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we have heard of those incidents. I would say, to our knowledge, that has been more isolated. We do know that has happened. And when we have approached the Corps and their contractors about that, they have responded. And I know there was a full one-day stand down. When we received information that was happening at a certain location in the county, they stood down all their crews, their subcontractors, and they made sure to re-educate, hey, this is not for live stuff. This is for storm-related debris. Do not be going and damaging storm banks even further or taking live material. So I do think that has been very much more isolated incidents that have happened, and I know it's happened across the state of North Carolina as well. So here, we've had a lot of conversations about that, and I know there's been a lot of emphasis and a lot of things in the field put in place, like the tolls and reinforcing slope embankments to try to minimize those damages. So, yeah, very much our partners involved, local nonprofits, like you said, wildlife. There's a lot of eyes in making sure that these things are going according to best management.
Appreciate you being on top of it, and thanks for your vigilance.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions? All right, Dane, thanks again. We appreciate you.
Next, we'll hear from Jennifer Harrison on Emergency Watershed Protection Program.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here today to share with you the Emergency Watershed Protection Program update. It's been a minute since I was here last. I believe we had just started last time I was here. I wanted to start off just showing you some of our field site visit pictures. This is the kind of damage that we're seeing out on the landscape that we believe qualifies for the program. We've been working with our partners at Tetra Tech to help us organize our program and our field work, and they've built us this great dashboard that helps us kind of get a snapshot of where we are. I'm going to dig into some of these numbers, but one thing that I wanted to point out, overall, so far we have assessed and made recommendations on roughly $25.45 million worth of damage. So that's how much we're estimating it will cost to repair the damage that we've assessed thus far. And that's protecting about $85 million worth of infrastructure. So one thing to remember with this program is that in order for it to qualify, the cost of the repair cannot be worth more or cost more than the value of what we are protecting. So as we look here today, our numbers are looking very good in terms of the value. The other thing that I wanted to point out here is that we have done 392 site visits so far and counting. We are not done, and that's a significant effort across the board with our staff and others. So digging into the data, so these are the bar graphs that you saw on the bottom. Emergency watershed protection has basically two levels to it. The first review round actually comes out of the site visit. So when we go out and we look at the site and we take pictures and we qualify it, so we have submitted 162 of those applications thus far. Now, I just told you we did 392 site visits. A lot of times we can combine those separate sites into one application. So we do not expect to see 300-400 actual applications submitted. We're guessing closer to the 200 applications. So in that first round, we have requested support on over 38,000 linear feet of stream bank to be stabilized at a cost of almost $18 million. And then we're also doing debris removal. And in that first round, we have requested a little over 5,000 cubic yards. So this program does it in square feet. I converted it to cubic yards just to point out that I think Dane just reported 1.4, 1.6 million cubic yards of debris removed. So this is much smaller scale and looking to really do particular sites rather than huge stretches. But that's at a cost of about $4 million. So that's what we've requested as of last Friday. So these numbers are changing already. And we have had 79 of those applications approved at a total of, $11 million. So, and that's first round. So then I want to take you to the second round. So the second round is more about assessing things like cultural resources. So not about the site visit. We've already, through the first round, said, yeah, these sites need repair, and we agree that they qualify for the program. Can we do the work? Are there barriers to the work getting done, such as cultural resources that we need to avoid? There we've submitted 36 applications, and according to these numbers, we have 20 approved at let's call it $2.8 million, 2.9 or $2.6 million. I just had an email right before I walked up here that said it's 2.9 million at this point. So we are continually getting more approvals. So the long and short of this is we are out working the landscape. We are responding to our residents as they need help, and we aren't done. So we are still collecting. If your property is damaged, please use the self-report tool. It's kind of a long email address, and I tried to shorten it in some way, but couldn't. But go to the Buncombe County website, and you can click the link to get there and report your damage. I also wanted to mention that we aren't doing this alone. We have had partnership across the state from soil and water conservation districts in at least 10 counties, as well as our NRCS partners, the Division of Soil and Water employees, and of course Tetra Tech has been helping us, including going out on site visits. And I just realized I forgot to add in there, our local extension office is also been fantastic at working with us. So that is my update. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Are there questions?
Thank you for this update. And it's great to know that people can still apply, because it's amazing. I know when we're out there, I'm always finding somebody who doesn't still know about some of the programs. So that's really good news. They can apply. And just, will you remind us with this, between all the different stacks of the funding, is the property owner having to put any money into this restoration?
That's a great question. So no, emergency watershed protection is fully funded, and it is now for Helene, it is funded 100% by the federal government. So we don't have a local or state match for this program either. Went right out of my mind what I was going to tell you there, but no cost to the landowner.
Okay. And then, and no cost to us as the county either?
Correct.
So 100%
Other than staffing for doing the assessments, no.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
My last one was just that list of local governments you thanked in your last slide, have they been thanked in writing? And if not, you send us the list, we'll send them.
Oh, yes. Well, we, have they been thanked in writing? That's a really good question. I thank them with food and treats as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we have, and it's ongoing, but I will happily share that with you.
Send it to us, we'll
And,
thank them.
Without them, we would be nowhere near 392 site visits for sure. I thought of one other thing that I wanted to mention, just to piggyback on what the question about live tree removal and things like that. We are also meeting with our nonprofit partners and other government agencies to work on stream bank stabilization outside of any established program. And so I want the community to hear that we hear you. We know that this is a massive impact and significant struggle, and we are continuing to work to find funding and to partnership wide scale with all of the entities in Buncombe County and beyond to try to respond to the impacts that our residents are facing. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. We appreciate your work. And we know from experience that you feed folks very well. All right.
Our next one is hazard mitigation grant with Brad Hughes.
Good afternoon. As Ms. Pender alluded to, my name is Brad Hughes, Project Manager for HMGP. I'm glad to be back. To date, Buncombe County residents, the state of North Carolina has advised that we have 319 applications for mitigation from property owners, along with 10 additional expressions of interest. These span a broad range of types, such as elevation mitigation, reconstruction, acquisition as well. Those also include slope stabilization, erosion control, some other project types as well. These application or projects represent a proactive step in reducing the long-term risk and making sure that we can rebuild a safer and more resilient community. NC Emergency Management organizes eligible properties into acquisition groups or project groups, likely to enhance the feasibility and cost effectiveness of each project. While we don't have insight into their exact criteria for grouping these properties, we feel that they may improve the cost-benefit ratio for projects, which is a key requirement for FEMA approval as well. Group 1, as we mentioned in our last briefing, has already been submitted to the state. Once the state has also forwarded that to FEMA, and once FEMA awards that letter, we will work with NCEM to begin the acquisition and demolition project, which will return those properties to open green space in perpetuity. Group 2 has been submitted to North Carolina Emergency Management. We submitted that on May 6th. NCEM is finalizing that project package for submission to FEMA. As well, we've been identified, or the state has identified, that Group 3 is currently under review by their hazard mitigation team. 25 additional properties are anticipated in this submission back to us. Hopefully we will receive those soon, and those are all focused on acquisitions as well. Thanks to the HELP Act of 2023, we are allowed to begin certain pre-award activities in partnership with North Carolina Emergency Management, and this keeps the momentum going while we await FEMA's decision or formal award decisions. You may recall that in past disasters, HMGP funding typically is released around month 12 post-declaration, and we're hopeful that FEMA will expedite these approvals for some of our earlier submissions. As shared in our previous briefings, hazard mitigation is a FEMA-funded initiative that helps communities reduce or eliminate future disaster risk. So just to remind folks of what that process looks like, that starts with a presidential disaster declaration, which opens the door for FEMA funding. Following that declaration, NCEM serves as the primary liaison between FEMA and the state or the individual counties. They work directly with the state, and it's the state's role to work with us. So they're really our liaisons with FEMA. HMGP is entirely voluntary. property owners can choose to participate. They can choose to change their application at any point in time. If they've chosen to acquire or submitted an application for an acquisition, they can update that to an elevation, a mitigation reconstruction. At any point in the process, they can also withdraw that application up to the point that the project work begins. As previously mentioned, NCEM groups those applications into batches, which appear to be based on project type and effectiveness, cost effectiveness at this point. The strategy is most likely to increase the likelihood of individual parcels that may not meet that cost-benefit analysis, meaning that the cost greatly outweighs the benefit. But when those are grouped together, the cost-benefit analysis is looked at on the project level, not the individual parcel. So some projects that alone would not be eligible become eligible in that grouping process. Unfortunately, that takes some time, but wanted to iterate that those are possible solutions as to why those are grouped from the state. Once the grouping is completed, the state sends those to the county. We have an internal evaluation and an internal evaluation team and an evaluation tool, which is standardized and helps to ensure objectivity and fairness in the decision process. For properties located within those municipalities, for those that we have an interlocal agreement for, the county is authorized to apply our decision matrix and make the decisions on the behalf of those municipalities. And for municipalities that do not have an interlocal agreement, we still complete our internal decision matrix and forward that on to those municipalities, and they use that information in their internal meetings, and they make their decision. Those come back to the county. The county does have or can elect to submit our recommendations to the state. So if a municipality chooses not to, the county does have the final authority to do that. Once those decisions are made by county management, we forward that application back to North Carolina Emergency Management for review. Once the county submits our final list, the state finalizes the application. The formal application submits that to FEMA. FEMA reviews each project for cost effectiveness, technical feasibility, environmental compliance, and historic preservation, among some other tasks. And if approved, FEMA alerts NCEM, they alert us of the award process, and then from there we move into an implementation process using the state-centric model. So this model has the state, or allows us to utilize the state for hiring and managing those contractors, overseeing all scope of work, paying the invoices, and closing out the project on the county's behalf. We're especially grateful that NCEM has they try to have those contractors hire locally so that we put more money back into our local economy. So we are thankful for that. And it is also important that we emphasize that HMGP is a deliberate process, and it must be. So we're trying to be stewards of public dollars, good stewards of public dollars. We protect the environment and ensure that every step meets the state and federal standards that have been set. So while it takes time, the result is a thoughtful, lasting investment in the community's safety. So as a reminder, the HMGP deadline is October 31st, 2025, 5 p.m. We encourage all interested property owners to not wait and go ahead and talk with our Helene Resource Center. They're here to help. The unique part about that is it's staffed with county folks. There are also some of our partners, FEMA and other agencies, that are there. It's a place where residents can go share their individual story and their situation, and can receive a customized mitigation and recovery plan. So that may include HMGP, it may include other funding sources that are available, but that resource is here for our community. The best resources for Buncombe County residents is the NCEM HMGP, a lot of acronyms there, I apologize, which includes videos, written guides. There's a homeowner hotline and the interest form for folks to begin that application process. So we understand that many property owners are eager for updates, and many feel uncertain about where their application stands. While we do not have access to the real-time status updates from the state or from FEMA, we are committed to keeping applicants informed at key milestones, such as when the state sends us their application in one of those groups, or whether we receive those funding decisions. We have communications in place to update folks as we have information. Any questions that I can try to address?
Thank you. Other questions?
Yes, Brad, can you, because I have been getting some questions from some folks who have applied. So where do you want us to direct them? Do you want to direct them to the One Buncombe call center, or where's the best place for them to reach out to find out where they are in the process?
Thank you, Commissioner Wells. Absolutely. So the state has the homeowner hotline. That's a great place to start. We work with our state partners as well. We do have an option. It's option 3 on the call center. We also have an email address that's internal for our team. It is hmgp@buncombenc.gov. That goes to our team. We can work with the state to ensure that the application was received. And then again, updating as soon as we hear more information once that property has been grouped from the state and comes to us in that application portion.
I missed the first one. You said there was a state hotline?
Yes, ma'am. So if you'll go to ncdps.gov/hmgp, that information's there with that number. It's a 919 area code because it's in Raleigh. But there's some information there as well.
And then, yeah, I think I may have one other question, but that was it for right now. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there other questions for Brad?
My only question,
Commissioner
or I guess, request from an update is, I believe the last time we were together, you mentioned staff was looking into hypothetical projects for the remaining categories of HMGP around resilience, or I'm not even sure what word I'm supposed to use for that last category.
Infrastructure projects are 5% and 7% projects.
Yes. So I guess A, is that still true, and how's it going? And B, is there a place you could direct me to just to educate myself on what is allowable under that category?
Yes, I'm going to let Mr. Raphael talk a little bit more about that. We did have some information recently.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, we are actively starting to work on that. We're working with our consultant partner, Tetra Tech, to get some subject matter expertise. At a high level, what we're really trying to do is understand what are the risks that are identified within our hazard mitigation plan, then identify projects to allow us to mitigate those risks. So at that point, I would encourage anyone who's interested to read the hazard mitigation plan to better understand kind of the risks that we're looking for. Staff are internally looking and starting to develop potential projects, and we're happy to follow up with some more information and reading materials for you all if you want to learn more about that program. But we're still in the early stages.
But I would be interested in, yeah.
Be happy to do
Seeing
that.
heads nod. Yes, thank you, Raphael. All right, thank you. Thank you, Raphael and Brad. We appreciate it.
Our next one, Commissioners, is landslides, and that is going to be Burnett Walls.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, County Manager. My name is Burnett Walls, and I am a member of the County Strategy and Innovation Team. Since the hurricane, I have been working with Raphael to co-lead the infrastructure RSF, and I'm here today to give you all an update on our progress as it relates to landslides in the county. So for a little context, there were approximately 2,000 landslides that occurred in western North Carolina as a result of the hurricane. Approximately half of those were located in Buncombe County. When we look at those roughly 1,000 slides, the degree of damage and the magnitude of the slides vary greatly, right? Ranging from our biggest being Garin Creek to slides occurring on unimproved land, not impacting any structures. So we really have the full spectrum of slides in that population of 1,000. So with all this in mind, as we've been working with multiple experts over the course of the past several months, I wanted to share with you all that I've heard numerous folks that we've worked with state to us that they have never seen anything like this, that the scale and magnitude of slides that have occurred in Buncombe County and western North Carolina is unprecedented. So you couple that with the fact that both FEMA and North Carolina Emergency Management do not have policy guidelines in place for the scale of the situation that we're currently facing. And unfortunately, the county does not have any landslide subject matter experts on staff. So I would be lying to you all if I told you that we were not building the plane as we're flying it. So we are definitely learning as we go. It has been a series of ups and downs. We make 2 steps forward, take 1 step back, but nevertheless, we are moving forward. And really, the first step in our solutioning process was to request that FEMA create a dedicated landslide task force. And that task force has conducted initial assessments on some of our larger slides in the county. Examples of those larger slides are Guerin Creek, the Grovemont neighborhood in Swannanoa, as well as Lakey Gaps, just to name a few. And really, the purpose of these initial assessments is to determine, one, the level of imminent danger, right? Is the slide likely to continue moving and potentially put structure or lives in danger? And really to begin to understand the nuances of each of these slides. So in addition to these larger slides, we really felt it was important to gain an understanding of what are the properties that have been impacted by these slides, right? We know there's these bigger ones, but there's also this population of smaller slides that we knew are out there, but really didn't quite fully understand. So to that end, advance here. So in an effort to better understand the impact to the residents, the county's GIS team has been able to partner with members of the North Carolina Geological Survey to combine landslide mapping that agency has conducted with mapping of the county's property parcels. So you can see on the screen we have here, this is actually the Grovemont neighborhood in Swannanoa, and you can see the property parcels which are highlighted in pink, so you can see all the different parcels on that map, and then you can see the slides that are impacting the various parcels. So working through all this data, we've been able to identify that there are 145 unique slides in the county that are impacting 246 residential properties. So we have a high-level understanding of the magnitude of the slides, but we really wanted to dig a little bit deeper to better understand what is the impact to slides impacting multiple properties. So by doing some additional stratification of the data, we're able to determine that there are 55 slides that impact 2 or more properties. And it's these slides that present the greatest challenge regarding a solution due to the complexity and nuances of each of these slides. I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to go out with the assessment team, the FEMA assessment team, and while I was out in the field, I've heard numerous engineers say that each slide is different and present its own unique challenges. So we, in this process, we've prioritized these 55 slides, and we're working on development of solutions for these slides. And the FEMA task force, those are what we're working through the list of those 55. And they're conducting assessments on these slides, and the idea behind these assessments is that, once again, it's determined if there's imminent danger that's present. If there is imminent danger, that then leads to development of an engineering estimate, cost estimate for engineering of the solution for the slide, which then typically leads to the stabilization work. If the answer is no during those initial assessments, that there are no structures and hence no lives at risk, then FEMA will not provide any funding for the assessment work or stabilization work. So a good example of an engineering estimate that we recently received from FEMA is for the Grovemont slide that you're seeing here. So just as a little bit more context, from their assessment, it was estimated that the engineering cost for an engineering study, $1.3 million. And that is based roughly, and I use the word very roughly, on a stabilization estimate of $17 million for the multiple slides in that Grovemont neighborhood. If you have any questions before I move on? I know I'm throwing a lot of data at you.
Yeah, let me just ask a clarifying question there. So speaking of the one that you're just talking about, so you're saying that so with the FEMA assessment, if they decide that there is imminent danger, then that's when FEMA will pay for the engineering study and the stabilization?
So the first step in the process is that initial assessment.
Right.
That initial assessment is kind of like that yes/no binary check mark that, yep, we determined that there is imminent danger. If it is, then that kind of gives us the green light to move forward with the engineering assessment and then ultimately the stabilization work.
Okay, and then, so if we get the green light with that, and then that FEMA does cover this by 100%, the engineering study and the stabilization?
I'll get to that on our next
Okay,
slide.
okay.
That's a great question.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
okay. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions before I move on?
All right, let's keep moving, Burnett.
Yep, sorry.
No need to apologize.
Okay. All right, so with regard to our current strategy for landslides, we really have three distinct paths forward that we've identified. So for slides on county or public property, and there are two, there's one at 40 McCormick Place and one at the landfill. We're proceeding with these as FEMA public assistance projects. The path forward is pretty straightforward with those. For in the middle category there, you can see those are the one slide impacting one private property, so that 1-to-1 ratio. For this scenario, the state's hazard mitigation grant program is really the best path forward for the homeowner. Brad just shared with you all some information on that, so I'm not going to get into it. But really, that 1-to-1, one side, one residential property, HMGP is the solution that we would recommend for that.
Just clarifying, and so when you say that, are you talking about like the acquisition specifically?
Potentially acquisition and/or slope stabilization. They will do some of that.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so then this brings us to our third category, and that's the large slides impacting multiple private properties. This is the most complex and nuanced of the three scenarios. We've been partnering with FEMA and North Carolina Emergency Management to develop a strategy for these slides. And, our approach is that this is not necessarily just a Buncombe County issue, but this is really a Western North Carolina issue as we work to develop this solution. So our current path forward in terms of our strategy for this category is that we're using that Grovemont slide as our pilot project. Some of the elements of the project that we're working to define are the funding model, right, for the engineering and essentially and eventually the stabilization work. It's been the position of the county that we have to minimize or eliminate any financial risk as it relates to cash flow for these projects. So we're working through how to accomplish that with our partners at FEMA and NCEM. Also, the county doesn't have any subject matter experts on staff, nor do we have the resources to project manage this slide, let alone the host of others that are likely to follow. So we're working through defining what resourcing looks like for the management of these slides. And there's a host of other items that I won't bore you with that we're working through as we work to stand up this pilot. But ultimately, the goal of the pilot is to develop a model that effectively mitigates future risk of the slides and serves as a best practice that can be leveraged across the counties of Western North Carolina. And in addition to the pilot, we're also looking into options for an early warning system when there's a potential for slides to occur. We're still very much in the due diligence phase of assessing that, but it is something that's definitely under consideration. Does anybody have any questions?
I've got one or two. I guess, like everybody else in the building, I've been trying to follow along
Sure.
news with any changes to FEMA-related pots of money.
Yep.
The FEMA PA program, the HMGP program, are relatively long-standing categories of funding within this whole effort. For the third category, are you saying there's to date no identified pot of money for that category of?
No, it's not that there's not an identified pot of money. It's
Okay.
really we're trying to work through
How to do it.
exactly That's
Okay.
exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And like I said, the principle that we've been adhering to is that we cannot be in a position to where we're advancing $17 million to vendors to perform this work. We need to make sure that from a cash flow perspective, we're not extending ourselves.
Okay. I guess it leaves me wondering, has there never been a presidentially declared disaster involving a landslide that impacted more than 2 property owners at once that FEMA in turn tried to repair and mitigate? Is this the first time this has happened?
The challenge is that we're kind of like, we're breaking the mold to some extent. We're asking FEMA to kind of break the mold, because typically what they would do is say, oh yeah, that's a public, a PA project, public assistance, kind of like what we're doing for the 2 sites that we have on our properties. But it's just due to the complexity and the magnitude of this, like I said, it's a resource challenge that we have, as well as we're very cognizant of the funding as well to kind of take on all the sides within the county. So it's a little bit different, in particularly how we're asking them from the funding perspective to make sure that we're lobbying for them to have advanced funding so that we're not extending ourselves. So that's the subtle twist or nuance to all of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Burnett.
Yep, there's a list of resources real quick that I'll share with you guys for anybody. And then oops, sorry. Well, long story short, we have a infrastructure help desk for anybody that's interested, for questions around slides. It's infrastructure@buncombecounty.org. If anybody has any questions, residents relating to slides, please don't hesitate to reach out. There's also the Helene Resource Center is a good place to start as well, too. Those all come back to Raphael and myself, so.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Today, Commissioners, was all about infrastructure, and one more is private roads and bridges. And that's coming from Rafael Bautista.
Sorry. All right. And one takeaway from Burnett's presentation that I want to really highlight is, at this point, while we are working with FEMA, there have been no guaranteed commitments of actual funding. We believe there might be funding. We're working through that, but at this point, we have no written guarantees. So in terms of private roads and bridges, this storm, like it impacted a lot of landslides, it impacted a lot of private roads and bridges. Over 3,000 private roads and bridges were damaged in western North Carolina, with about 30% of that damage occurring in Buncombe County, ranging from small amounts of damage to a road or bridge to complete destruction of a road and bridge. So it's definitely a very significant challenge that we're seeing in our community. According to FEMA, the scale is unprecedented, and the reason they say this is they're not used to working in communities where such a large percentage of the road system is privately owned. So they tend to deal with a much smaller numbers. But separately from landslides, the fortunate thing, if you will, here is the playbook, it just has to be changed a little bit to adapt to the scale, but the actual kind of systems they have in place work in this situation. The county does not have subject matter experts on bridges and roads on staff. In North Carolina, counties do not do roads and bridges, so we do not have roads and bridge staff. That being said, we are committed to helping our survivors recover. We understand the importance of having access roads to the residential structures. We understand the importance of our fire trucks and our ambulances be able to access these. So we have been working diligently from the very beginning to advocate and do as much as we can for our community. Part of that includes taking the self-report damage people are reporting, GIS data. We have information we're receiving from first responders in the field, developing a list of what we believe to be all the roads and bridges that were damaged, and sending out our local fire marshals as well as the National Guard to assess those bridges, to verify those bridges were damaged, to identify the amount of damage, and then when they identify bridges that were damaged to a point where a fire truck couldn't get through, our fire marshals were then working with the local fire districts to let them know to be prepared that if you were going to respond to that residence, it might take you a little bit longer. Please plan ahead. So these are all things that we've been advocating for on behalf of our residents. And then we had the Disaster Recovery Act of 2025, which calls for a state-centric program. The next few slides do come from the state and speak to the state program. So the state program really started early January when Governor Stein signed Executive Order 2, which called for the creation of a state bridge and road program. The state then passed a Disaster Recovery Act in early March that funded the program and set the parameters for the program, and then they launched an application process, which has been open since early March. We, along with Slowell's McDowell County, have been working with the state to develop a pilot program that will start in McDowell and Buncombe counties. And the state currently is working to onboard their engineers, their consultants, and their contractors to do this work. The deadline for people to submit their applications can be August 3rd of this summer, and then construction has to be completed by the state by September of 2026. And we'll move into the specifics of the program. So what is eligible and what is ineligible through the program? This program will cover repair and replacement of private roads and bridges damaged by Helene that provide the sole option for ingress and egress to emergency services that access either a residential property, single residential property occupied by the property owner for the majority of the year, an area with multiple residential homes, or areas with commercial recreational facilities. Per the Disaster Recovery Act, if the road the HOA has a responsibility to maintain that road, the HOA has to cover at least 50% of that cost of the repair. Now, they can apply any FEMA assistance they received to that cost, but the state will only cover 50% if there's an HOA that has maintenance responsibilities for that road. What is ineligible? If the work has already been done, the state will not reimburse for that. If a property owner or an HOA wants to bring in their own contractors, do their own engineers, do their own work, the state also will not cover that. The state will only cover the work that they do. They will not cover temporary repairs. They're only doing permanent repairs. And then at the end of this program, once the road or bridge has been repaired, it goes back to the ownership of that property owner or the HOA, as well as the responsibility for the maintenance. The state is not taking on any responsibility for these roads long-term. They're just going back. This is a one-time fix. So the work is going to be designed by engineers hired by North Carolina Emergency Management. And then the actual work will be done by licensed contractors working for North Carolina Emergency Management. Additionally, to increase their scope and capacity, the state is working with select nonprofits in the region that do have contractors, engineers, to use them as kind of a force multiplier. So there'll be some nonprofits doing work as well. A couple of specific things related to Helene. One is communities must identify damaged or destroyed roads and bridges and provide that information to North Carolina Emergency Management by August 3rd. At this point, every single road and bridge that we know has been damaged or destroyed, we have sent that to the state, along with assessments that have been completed by the National Guard and our local fire marshals. When we get new reports, we go ahead and send those to the state. So we are ensuring that our residents have been put into the system. We will be responsible for permitting these projects to our local standards. The state has been informed in writing of our standards for permitting for roads and bridges. If it is a bridge or a culvert, it's going to have to be stamped by a professional engineer, and we've been working with the state on that as well. And then all construction will be completed by September 2026. Something new that we learned in the last couple of weeks is once all this construction is done, the state's flood mapping programs actually come and remap all the areas where they've done work on bridges to better help us better understand flood impacts and flows in the future. So that's a nice addition. We'll play a key role in this. It's a state-centric program, but we are partners with the state. I meet, as well as Burnett, we meet with the state leadership on this effort every other week to keep abreast and continue to advocate for our residents. We've encouraged people to go to the website to apply. When folks have questions, we're happy to answer them at infrastructure@buncombenc.gov. I spent a good hour on the phone with the neighborhood this morning, helping them understand the program, some of the questions they had. So we are supporting them as much as we can. In terms of next steps, as I said, the state is currently onboarding all their contractors At this point, no actual construction work has started. We believe some initial engineering has started, but no construction has, and we do not have a tentative timeline yet of exactly when construction will start, as they still kind of start onboarding them. One big thing that they have agreed to is they will provide a monthly email update to survivors saying, here's where we are with the program. We believe the importance of reaching out to residents, and the state has committed to doing that as well. And they do have an FAQ on the website that they maintain on a regular basis. If folks want to learn more about this program, they can go to ncdps.gov/Helene/PRB, and there's a website with a fair amount of information. There's the link to the actual application form. It's the second bullet. Much like Jennifer Harrison's link earlier, it's a very long link, but it's there. It's also on the state website. Additionally, as much as we are more than happy to answer any questions, folks can go to Helene Resource Center as well to get questions answered about this. The state does have a dedicated call center for private bridge and road questions, and that's 1-844-746-2326. Or folks can email ncemprb@ncdps.gov. And my understanding is they are relatively responsive. And that's all the information I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Raphael. This is really helpful. Are there questions? Commissioner
Raphael, you mentioned that if there's a number of homes and they're served by an HOA, the state will only cover 50% of the costs?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why they made that decision to do that?
It's part of the legislation. So the legislation that funded it included that 50% cost share.
Got it. But if you're a single-family home, they can help you cover the full cost, but
Yes, sir.
HOAs have to come up with the other half on their own.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions? All right, Raphael, thanks so much. I'm sorry, Commissioner Wells. Okay, thanks, Raphael. Me too. Me too.
We had one more topic, but it is the peer-to-peer learning we had with Lee County, Florida.
Yes.
So I'm gonna ask Ryan if he can fast forward through that because we still have a couple more topics on the agenda.
Good afternoon. I'll go through this real quickly. We were very fortunate to have Lee County, Florida come in. We had the Public Safety Director, Director of Strategic Resources and Public Affairs, Visitor and Convention Bureau Director, and a couple of people from the Collaboratory Community Foundation that came and visited with us to be able to give us some of their experiences, which they were making phone calls with them last week to find out different things that had occurred and some experiences that they had with FEMA. And so the first day we focused on recovery and rebuilding. The second day we focused on creativity, hardening, and resiliency because we were looking for what are some of the creative projects. And Lee County came out ahead on a lot of these things where they were very innovative in some of the things that they were doing. And so we wanted to capture some of that and work through some of that with them. And for those who don't know where Lee County, Florida is, it's where Fort Myers is, City of Fort Myers and Fort Myers Beach. So with this, we were able to look at opportunities to enhance response and preparedness through disaster staffing policies that they had, and we've since reached out to other communities to work through that. We've been able to look at some field engagement to make sure that planners are involved with the affected areas, the importance of creativity and envisioning with a desired state and recovery beyond building back exactly as it was before. And that was one of the things that resonated from them with us is if you're looking to get back to normal, it's not happening. This is the new normal. This is the new way that you're going to be, and it's time to accept that and move forward. And so that was very positive for them it was hard for us to accept, but very positive to hear it from them. The recovery process belongs to the community and not just the government alone. And some of the things that they gave us in a meeting that we had with them, things that we need to remember is create and maintain bench depth in all of our positions, our key positions. Make sure that we've got that bench depth in there. Create and maintain redundancies. Attrition will occur after an event like this, and they had lost, I think it was 30% of their workforce from the last storm that they had had, and they'd had several that they've dealt with. Utilize existing plans, don't recreate what you already have. Understand a plan versus application, and they had a hard time with that, with building some of theirs out. Leverage partnerships, bring others to the table. Long-term recovery is long-term, and that's something that we got to remember is it's not going to happen tomorrow. It is going to be long-term, and this is the new norm, and that was something that they reiterated. Some of the things that they also told us that we need to do, we need to give ourselves grace, kindness, and rest. And it was very important with the things that they gave us and came in. Any questions?
Any questions for Ryan?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think Commissioner Whitesides and I got to meet with some of the guests the morning before everyone got started, and they were excited to be here to support Buncombe County and help us learn from their experiences. So we are grateful to Lee County and for our staff for taking time to learn from them as well. All right, Manager Penrith.
Commissioners, one other thing in Helene recovery, I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Commissioner Wells gave us a contact with Senator Budd's office around the post office for Swannanoa. And we have heard back from Senator Budd's office so far. So since Helene, you know that post office has been closed. Senator Budd's asked us to fill out a form that he could then send forward on our behalf. What we have heard back so far from his office is they have initiated what is known as an alternate quarters process. So just want to know, post office, the U.S. Postal Service has initiated alternate quarters, which means that they're looking at a different location. So they're not looking to stay at the former location, but they're actively looking for real estate in the area that is available for lease on terms that are commercially viable and comparable with other business use leases. So that was positive for us to hear. I don't know if you want to add anything, Commissioner Wells, but it was positive for us to hear that they were looking for a new location and they intend to have a presence in Swannanoa.
Yes, and we definitely appreciate Senator Budd's office for getting back to us so quickly. And they said that they will follow back up with us when they have some more information as well. So they'll be forthcoming with more information.
Great. Commissioner Wells, I know we are all appreciative and grateful that you are taking the lead on working with Senator Budd's team on this. We know it's an important issue to our Swannanoa friends. Thank you. All right, I think we are back to our agenda, and we have a comprehensive plan update with Jillian Phillips and Nathan Pennington. Thanks for joining us, y'all.
Good afternoon, or almost evening. So we are here today to give you an update to the comprehensive plan. We're going to talk about how we are doing on implementation and how we are evaluating implementation given Helene recovery and prioritizing things that help Helene recovery. We're going to review zoning map amendments and the changes to our growth, equity, and conservation map. We're going to review our previous plan of action regarding text amendments, which was our first big implementation project. We're going to review approved text amendments, and then our adjusted plan of action for text amendments due to Helene. And I'll give you an update on the small area plan. We'll talk about future projects. And then Nate's going to talk to you about how the flood damage prevention ordinance will be updated based on that focus on recovery. So just to give you a reminder, we adopted our first comprehensive plan on May 16th, 2023. It created an overall vision theme for the future of the county. It had numerous goals, policies, and actions to accomplish that vision. It created our first future land use plan map, which is our growth, equity, and conservation map, or our GEC map. And it also created an equity analysis tool to help our boards and our staff evaluate equity when making land use decision. And it has been used in other planning processes in the county, such as the strategic plan, the upcoming parks plan, and the future pedestrian plan. Oops. So, one second. Sorry. Can you go back? I don't know what I did. I went the wrong way. Oh, I'm holding the clicker the wrong way. That's why. go, can I go back? Okay, there we go. So, per North Carolina state law, when a map amendment is approved and it doesn't conform with your adopted comprehensive plan's future land use plan map, the rezoning has the effect of automatically changing the adopted map. So we wanted to go over that with you. The 3 rezonings that changed the map were the 2 on Long Shoals Road and then our Hitching Post Lane rezoning. Changing the map and tracking where that map is changing is one way we keep track of development patterns in the county. You can see that 2 of the changes were on the Long Shoals Road corridor between I-26 and Brevard Road. So that tells us, as a planning staff, that might be an area we need to reevaluate when we do an update to the plan. We have been using the growth, equity, and conservation map in our land use analysis since the plan was adopted, and it is now available online for the public to look at on our public GIS site if they are interested in what their particular property or particular area is indicated as on the growth, equity, and conservation map. So just to remind you, our first big implementation project was going to be a large set of text amendments, and these were our previous text amendment buckets that we were running through prior to the storm. But of course, the storm happened, and that sort of made us reevaluate things. So one of the text amendments that we got through before the storm was the cryptocurrency data center and government practices, and that one supported actions and policies from the following sections of the plan: growth, equity, and conservation, farms, forests, and environment, health and recreation, and infrastructure and energy. And to show you that shift, after the storm, we did an emergency housing text amendment, and that was also supported by the growth, equity, and conservation section of the plan. So we sat down after the storm and we thought about what are the text amendments that would help in recovery. And we came up with 3 areas: housing, replacing and increasing our stock of housing, economic development, and recovery. And you can see from the 3 buckets, we have 3 examples of proposed text amendments that we are looking at to help with recovery. So for example, housing, ending mandatory single-family zoning, again, increasing the number of units; economic development, revising parking requirements and making development reviews more efficient; and then recovery, Nate's going to talk to you about the flood ordinance, but we're also going to look at our steep slope, high elevation, and protected ridge overlay, and our hillside development standards. So we're looking at things that directly relate to recovery, and they might be smaller text amendments because we're trying to create changes in that ordinance as fast as we can to help with that process. Just to update you, we have started working on the small area plan, and I will be coming back to you later tonight with the steering committee resolution to form the steering committee, and we will start heavy public outreach in July, which is our kickoff, but we are out in the community trying to get the word out and going to meetings and public events and handing out, getting people to sign up for the newsletter and handing out postcards and those sort of things. So future projects we're working on for implementation: we are working on a dashboard once we get our new website for, so the public can see progress we're making towards implementation. We're getting our policies and actions added to ClearPoint, which is the internal county software we use to track policies and actions, so all the departments are aware and it's right there for them to look at and easy to look at. We are going to be bringing back the donut holes. We always say we have countywide zoning, but we have a few areas that per North Carolina general statute we could never zone, and we can now zone those. So we're going to close that loop, make sure those areas are zoned and protected, and our development regulations apply there. And then again, what I talked about, we're evaluating proposed changes, and we're going to bring you proposed changes that help with recovery. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nate, and he's going to talk about the flood ordinance.
Thank you, Jillian. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Building on what Jillian said here, this is a prime example of adapting to current events. Many of y'all remember the Great Recession. Coming out of the Great Recession, there were a lot of economic development changes that were made to help stimulate the economy coming out of that. Think of this kind of the same, obviously a lot different, but let's talk a little bit about the flood damage prevention ordinance. I want to hit upon the things that staff, with our small flood staff, is fully committed to working on, making sure substantial damage appeals. That's an area we're in now. We went through our substantial damage assessments. Lee County had a lot of interesting stories. They had a lot of differences there, but we talked a lot with them about this is one of the most important things to get right, because this is the thing that can get you in hot water very quickly with FEMA. And that's why we hit really hard on that. Now we're working through an appeal process. Again, remember substantial damage. If you're a pre-firm structure, if you're a structure built under a previous mapping cycle, you have a 50% threshold to work with on that. Permitting is, we are heavy now in the permitting world. This covers everything from reconstruction, new construction, bridges and culverts. Speaking of that, I do need to make a couple clarifying comments real quick on bridges and culverts. Not all bridges and culverts occur within the special flood hazard area. Many of them do, but many of them, the damage was so extensive, it went so far beyond the upper reaches of where the watersheds start, where our water courses start. We saw a lot of damage outside of those areas. However, if there's ever any question when it comes to bridges and culverts, please don't hesitate to reach out to planning staff for direction on what those look like. We were very thankful that FEMA did work with the state, with emergency management, and with the flood mapping division, specifically with the state NFIP coordinator, in giving us that memo. That memo helped out greatly. What it said was, you can forego hydrology, hydrography, and hydraulics in very expensive studies that involve hydrological engineers if you build back like for like or more resilient bridges and culverts. Now what that does is it sets us up for our next flood mapping cycle. Remember, about 3 to 4 years out on new maps. What we're probably going to see, because we had a lot of old infrastructure, a lot of these bridges and culverts, they didn't really meet today's standards. So we may actually see some improvements in conveyance. Those will be picked up in that next mapping cycle. Now remember, during leaf off, they flew the planes. We were getting the LiDAR data. That's the first step in getting the new maps. So more to come on that. And let's see, we are also retroactively fully permitting all of our emergency permits that went out right after the storm to make sure that we're in full compliance with all FEMA standards there. Working with land resources on stream restorations and realignments. Unfortunately, when it comes to stream restorations and realignments, there is additional engineering that has to go into that. We don't have any streamlined process on that at this time like we do bridges and culverts. However, I will say there's a lot of nature-based solutions that can be employed, live staking and programs like that we're looking into as well. Those can save a lot of money. Future program changes and text amendments. I've come to you all before talking about a phased approach. We've talked about the comprehensive plan. We've talked about support for the community rating systems. These are the things we're kind of looking at now. Higher freeboard, accessory structures, RVs, greater restrictions in the floodway, repetitive lost properties, and flood shadow. Now, to illustrate that point, our priorities are as follows. We would like to target life safety changes. These are the changes that floodplain managers have always struggled with, the things that we think that we could bring to you by the end of the year. Now remember, any changes to the flood ordinance has to go through the planning board, so we have to work the process. The 3 main focus areas are as follows. Freeboard. 2 feet is the current standard. Remember, that's a higher standard. Some communities only build to the base flood elevation. We build 2 feet higher. We are looking at a 3-foot freeboard, 1 additional foot. Remember, we can always go higher when we join the CRS program as well. These are the things we're focusing on now. One of the other things that we saw actual loss of life of are RVs in the floodway. Now, there's FEMA guidance that allows you to do this, and for years, we've seen plenty of RVs and RV parks in the floodway. I think it's appropriate to evaluate this and look at any new parks, any new RVs, look at a prohibition in the floodway. There's still plenty of areas in the special flood hazard area that are in the 100-year that are more appropriate. But remember, the floodway almost always certainly floods under a flood event. It is the area that is the most perilous, and it's the area where we see the most loss of life. The other thing that's a little more nuanced, and I don't want to get too into the weeds on it today, is a thing that's called the flood shadow. If you have an existing building in the floodway, and here's why I'm going to explain why this is important. The code currently says no new habitable structures in the floodway. What it doesn't talk about is building in this flood shadow. So if you have an existing building in the floodway, there is the possibility you could do an addition if you fall within the shadow area. Now, the addition has to be built to modern standards. But again, with what we saw with Helene, I don't believe we should continue to entertain this practice. I think this is certainly something that we can look at. Now, this is going to be the hardest to look into and bring some standards, but I think there's an area for growth here, and the growth in the right direction. And by growth, I mean further regulation. And with that being said, that ends that presentation. What questions can I answer for you if you have any at this time?
Thank you, Nate. I first want to quickly acknowledge that as a former planner, coming up with the text amendments post-comprehensive plan is something that you guys probably do in your careers like once or twice, and coming up with a post-disaster recovery plan is something you probably do in your careers once or twice, and you're doing all of it at once. And so I just want to acknowledge that as the guy who every meeting asks you to do more. So thank you for that. The bucket slide had me thinking of something else on my mind related to the former ETJ areas around. I think one of the biggest problems facing both the people of Buncombe County and Buncombe County government is just how empty urban Asheville is and how underutilized all of its space is. I'm thinking of Patton Avenue and Tunnel Road and McDowell and the CBD, but that's not under our zoning jurisdiction. I'm thinking of like Brevard Road and the new car dealership area over there. I think that's a former ETJ area. So I'm ranting now, but my question is the former ETJ areas and kind of a new vision of zoning or text amendments around those locations. Is that something in the near-ish term on your mind?
The ETJ has been on our minds as planners ever since it was abolished. Now, don't forget, it's not just Asheville, but Weaverville's ETJ. These two areas are the highest potential for growth, and we're seeing it. I would say it's safe to say that we're seeing more development out in the county right now than you're seeing in some of the municipalities for obvious reasons, because they're built out. I mean, they are left with estate lots at this point. The ETJs also are rich in infrastructure, water and sewer. We have been talking about things we've never talked about before, sidewalks. We've got patchwork quilt of sidewalk pieces here and there, New Lester Highway, Smoky Park Highway, just pick one. But these are areas where you have more urban levels of service, and they're more appropriate to look at a development. So absolutely great point. Also think of the 70 corridor, not former ETJ, but it's urban. All of Swannanoa, again, sidewalk project. Yes, these things are absolutely on our minds. Back to what Jillian said earlier, we need to be thinking about ways that we could potentially get smaller projects to staff with some regulations that you hand us over as use by right subject to special requirements, lessen the amount of things that are going to the Board of Adjustment. Does the Board of Adjustment really need to review a 30-unit development? Can that be done appropriately with staff review with certain standards in place? We think so. These are the type of areas that we think that we'd like to focus on, and we can get the most bang for our buck, get hammers swinging, and get units on the ground.
Thank you.
That was a long answer, but I think I got lost. So I want to make sure I clarify what I thought I heard. I thought you were asking if that is something we're thinking about bringing forward now, zoning direction in the ETJ. what I thought they were talking about focusing on was those life safety priorities. So I didn't hear ETJ on that, so I want to make sure that I'm clear when.
I heard loud and clear what the priority was. I guess what's next is that on the, is the former ETJ areas kind of on your
Wanna make sure.
next to-do list, I guess is my unfair question.
It's going to be a little further out.
Yeah,
I think the
yeah.
priority areas we focus
Okay,
on were.
just want to make
As
sure.
opposed, is it like
expectation was
number
set.
3 as opposed to number 13 is, I guess, is my question.
You want to go back to the updated?
Well, I just want to note that we did look at the former ETJs when we were coming with the up with the growth, equity, and conservation map. And if you look at those former ETJ areas, they're the higher use, higher intensity areas. So that's something we thought about with the comprehensive plan. But we are trying to focus on recovery and those buckets for recovery that we can help with housing and economic development and all those things.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I was just going to note that, consistently still as we're out in the community, hearing the desire and the concerns from residents of how do we build back in a way that's more resilient, how do we build back that next time we have a major flood event, life and property is protected, and I know that's what y'all are focused on right now, and I just want to thank you so much for, after everything you've been having to do at a busy time, thinking about how to look forward and do this right. So thank y'all, to your team. Thank you.
Thank you both. We appreciate it. All right, Lillian Govas is on her way up with an exciting website transition update for us. Hey, Lillian.
Hi, nice to see y'all again. I wanted to provide you with an update on where we are with our website migration. As we've talked about a little bit, we are moving our website from an HTML-based website to a content management or CMS. Probably many of y'all have used a CMS for political websites that you update frequently, or if you're a blogger or anything like that. So a content management system, what is it? It allows folks to create, manage, and publish digital content without any sort of coding knowledge. So you don't have to have that expertise in order to make those regular updates to the page. Multiple team members can make these updates in real time without having to submit a ticket or go through an IT process. It handles all of the back end and the front end coding, and we can make those updates in the fancy bits of the website. Staff focus on producing content, photos, videos, all of the pieces that tell the story of the work that we do that can sometimes be difficult to get updated in real time. We can do that now, focusing on the user interface and the user experience. We can also add social media feeds, and we can also adapt it easily for mobile usage. That's super important. We did the community survey back in 2024, if anyone remembers that time. But we found in that community survey that the website is one of the top ways that folks in our community get their information about the county. They also really identified our website as being easy to use. I think it's something like 87% of respondents in that community survey were very pleased, satisfied, or didn't have an opinion on the ease of use for our website, which is a really good sign. We talked about the website being easily utilized for mobile access. In that second graph, I know this is hard to read, second graph, that big bar across the top, that shows how many people are accessing websites using mobile devices. So that can be your phone, it can be your tablet. So we know folks these days most frequently are using a digital device to do that. Well, of course you're using a digital device, a mobile device to access the websites. Personal laptop or a laptop, that's those third and fourth bars. So it drops off significantly. So having a website that easily transitions to that mobile format is really good. I will tell you, folks ask about, do we need an app? Download rates for apps are so low that it would be negligible for us in terms of the amount of work it would take to get it launched for the amount of people who would download it. I know I personally don't want to download one more app The apps that people like to download are those ones where you're generating content like TikTok or Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So wanted to give y'all a sneak peek of the website, and it doesn't look blurry. This is a screen cap of a video, but we are not doing a rebrand on the website. We want to maintain as much of the user navigability that currently exists so that the things that they found before will be in similar places. It just won't look quite as fancy. HTML-based sites are the creme de la creme of websites. But we only have 2 people on our entire staff who know how to work our HTML-based site on the back end. So the CMS is a bit like selling the Porsche to get the minivan. We'll open up the doors and more people will get on board, but it just won't be quite as fancy. So with the new website, we'll still have the rotating banner. We'll still have the access navigation across the top. All of those mirror exactly what we have now. We've got the search bar. We've got those same kind of key things in the blue navigation. And then these bits that we're going through right now, we can change those based on website traffic. Register of Deeds gets a ton of traffic. We've got our news stories here, and then we've also got our calendar with upcoming events. One of the only things that's really all that different is we'll embed our Facebook feed down at the bottom. So that's important because in the instance that we have an emergency or a crisis, all of that information will be updating real time on our Facebook feed faster than we can make any other updates. But with the content management system, we can make those updates. Remember, during Helene, we flipped the website to a light text website so that folks, we didn't have the bandwidth to be able to access this, trying to make it really easy. The only way we could do that is one of our web developers actually lives 2 hours away, right on the line of the remote work, and he did not have a power outage, so he was able to do that for us during that time. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do it. With the content management system, we will. This also ensures ADA compliance. We've got new, I'm sure everyone's really up to date on the new WCAG rules that are coming down. If not, we're here for you. It's basically how people with disabilities, low vision, and how people on mobile devices can access websites and still have that experience. Screen readers, alt text, the way that the font and the colors of the website play to help people be able to access the information. All of this is much easier with our content management system across the organization. Deadline for compliance with those new WCAG guidelines is April 24th, 2026. So we'll be able to launch this site and then fine-tune it, make sure we're in compliance. That is not all. Sarah is super excited about a module that impacts all of you.
She sure is. Also, with this, the page that you receive your agenda as well as the agenda is going to look different. So you can expect to see that change with your June 17th meeting. Much more information to come.
Haven't seen Sarah smile all meeting until now.
So our progress, where we are right now, we have 600 pages on our website. We have to go through that. We have migrated all of them. So we've put a hold on all of the regular updates to our current website. We are going through each one of these pages, page by page, to make sure that the navigation, the information is correct, links aren't broken. So we're about halfway through the review of that information. We are slated to go live June 17th. We're kind of white knuckling it a little bit. We're not in the position that we would have preferred to be in, but I will tell you, unless you are a vendor, you will never say that website transitions go easy. Vendors will be like, yeah, it's super simple. But on our side, very, very difficult. There will be things that are broken. There will be things that won't quite work right, but we will work quickly to get those adjusted. The good news is so many more people will be able to make those updates to the website moving forward than just those 2 brilliant experts who have given us their time. And then following that go live in August, we'll start training all of our departmental authors so that they will be able to make those updates to their web pages. And then What we didn't include on here is the intranet. That's going to be a phase 2. So this fall, once we get this first one done, we'll migrate the intranet. Our intranet is really highly used, which is not a common thing in many organizations. So we want to make sure we get that right for our staff. Of course, this coincides with the soft rebrand of buncombenc.gov. We are transitioning that new URL. Everything will redirect, so nothing will get lost into the ether. Everything will redirect to the new site. That does include all of our email addresses making that change. We're doing a soft rebrand. We're not going to throw away everything that has the old email address and print a whole bunch of new stuff. It will all work. Just moving forward, we'll use the .gov, and then we will do phase 2 in the fall. I tried to be fast. I know we're running late.
That was incredibly fast. Lillian, this is really exciting to see. I know this is a ton of work. I do want to note that I don't think any of us missed the line that said county commissioners are excited about the rollout
Oh, yes,
on your
the
test
news
page.
story.
That I think watching the head shake, we're really excited about that and look forward to it officially being unveiled. And I know after talking with Sarah, she's also looking forward to some new management tools that will help us as well. So thank you both.
Cool. Thank you.
Long time in coming.
100% a long time coming. Thanks to our CAPE team.
So commissioners, we have a few minutes left, and there's one other item. If you want to push that item to the regular meeting tonight, or if you want to go ahead and hear from Nancy. It is a required hearing that we just need to present it, so if you want to do it now or later, that's your call.
I had one item too.
And we do have one other item. Is it brief, Nancy?
Very brief. I can do it in 30 seconds, I promise.
All right, timer's starting. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. This is a required update from NC Commerce on the Community Development Block Grant Funds that we received back in, executed the contract in 2023. We had an RFP that was and accepted the application from Habitat for Humanity to do home repairs for homes for low and moderate income people outside the city of Asheville in Buncombe County. And as Matt had reported in February at our previous update, Habitat had asked to exit that contract. So in the meantime, we've been in touch with Commerce, very supportive about looking at ways to utilize the funds for Hurricane Helene recovery. Any questions? Did I get it? We still have a minute.
I think we still have a few seconds. Are there questions for Nancy?
All right, to me.
All right, sounds great. Nancy, thank you so much. We appreciate you being flexible. And Commissioner Sloan does have an item that he wants to bring forward to us. Is that linked online right now, or do we just have paper copies?
It's just paper copies at the moment.
All right, the floor.
I'll try to be quick. We are in the midst of the last, I think what would be the last ever comment period to NCDOT on the Interstate 26 project. And with my colleague Maggie Olin, the City Council, been working on this draft dual letter from the city and the county that you all have. We talked about it. I talked with you individually last meeting. And there's a few asks in here. I can tell you right now that the mayor took this letter to see Tim Anderson at NCDOT to make sure he was aware of it and that we weren't surprising anybody with any of its contents, and made him aware. Just want to make sure that they're not surprised, but also that they could be supportive of some of the contents in the letter. And I can tell you right now that probably the best news that I've heard in a while is that they were able to agree to the ask in bullet number 2, which is to work with us and the city on an aesthetics committee and an alternative design task force. So they will work with and participate in both of those committees, which will be, as the names of them imply, to work on the aesthetics. As you know, we have, I think it's $1 million in our budget that's been set aside for a long time on the design around this project to improve its aesthetics. And also there's an alternative design task force that has reemerged within Asheville on potential changes to this project as it's currently designed. The biggest thing that's occurred in the last 12 months around this project is the I-26 flyover bridge design that you maybe read about in the newspaper. And so that was part of the catalyst for this letter. I think the other catalyst that was important to me is I finally realized that Buncombe County has never sent a written comment letter to DOT on this project. The last effort that I'm aware of that I was able to find is from 2009, where we took a vote, where our predecessors took a vote of some sort on this project. So this is designed to be a dual letter from both governments as a comment letter, primarily to thank them for their cooperation and efforts to date, and to continue our partnership and work with them moving forward. Let me know if you have any questions.
Commissioner Sloan, thank you, and to you and Councilwoman Ullman for taking the lead on this letter. Commissioners, I know two of the first questions that I had for Commissioner Sloan happened to be just a concern about expressing our own concern about where we are in this process. Would it cause DOT to just completely abandon the connector project? And my second question was, if they are going to move forward with the suggestions that we're making, does it extend the length of the project? This has been in the works since the mid-'80s, and I think the last thing we want is for this to continue to be drawn out to the point where nothing happens, particularly as a growing city and county. And both of those concerns have been addressed through the conversation with Mr. Anderson at DOT, and knowing that he has signed off on this prior to receiving it, I think does leave us in a good space with DOT and the relationship with them. Yes, Manager Pender.
And I would just clarify, Parker, that there's actually no money set aside for that $1 million, right? It was in a future year. We said way back before I came that we would contribute, but we've never allocated any dollars. So whenever that comes up, you would actually have to fund it.
Okay.
So I just wanted to be clear.
I don't know, where did I get that amount from? Or it's just an aspirational goal of ours? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Yes, we did discuss that before I came. It was in notes that we would fund this at some point in time, whenever they request it. But we've never actually funded amount and set the cash aside.
I will stop speaking like it is sitting somewhere in a...
Yes, it is not.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, are there questions, comments prior to moving forward on sending this?
No, just thank you for leading the charge on this.
And I think Manager Pender does have a question or comment.
On our Helene updates, we've been doing those at every meeting, every briefing, and as we move forward into June, we will slow that cadence down and we will go to monthly.
Great.
So on the second meeting of the month, we'll bring back a Helene update.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. All right, do we have consensus to move forward with a signature on this letter to DOT?
Yeah, no, just the one other thing I'll mention. I think we want to ensure that this reflects that, as local government's highly dependent upon property and sales tax, we want to ensure that this process does not negatively impact that for us. And that I also want to acknowledge just the decades of community involvement and the hours that volunteers have put forward to better this project. And I think this letter does a service to them, their work, and encourages the DOT to maintain that commitment to hear their concerns.
Thanks, Commissioner Ball. All right, Commissioners, appreciate the support. It is 5:02. We do need to take just a quick break before we reconvene. Let's be ready to go at 5:15. I will be in my seat calling the meeting to order at 5:15.